What is going on, my fellow Omi homies? It is Foster, and I'm back at it again with another VeVe Andy Comey live stream. Guys, today, as I can see many of you in the comment section already alluding to, we have an absolute stacked lineup of individuals here. I don't think any of them need an introduction in the community. But for those of you that do not know, we have Sleepyn Comics here. He's got a YouTube channel. Welcome. Someone who I think has a small YouTube channel. Some of you may have heard of him, Mr. Andrei Jikh. We have the Comics and Crypto podcast here. We got Sean and Spencer. Thank you for joining us, gentlemen. And of course, the one, the only Mr. Henry Pagliuca, the low mint master himself. So, and I guess I'm Foster for those of you that don't know, but it's my channel. So hopefully you've at least heard of me if you're here now. So, if not, welcome aboard. And if you're not subscribed, please feel free to do so down below. This is an absolutely great conversation that I'm looking forward to have. I will be the first one to admit that I am not as knowledgeable on comics as I am on a lot of other facets of the VeVe Andy Comey community, which is why it seemed like a logical thing to bring together the resident experts in their field so that we could give a lot of insight and feedback into what is going on in the digital comic book space, some things that we should see coming moving forward, the impact of low mints, how that relates to real world collecting, what is the true market value of collectibles on the app, how accurate is it to comics that we do see in real life, and obviously comparing real world comics versus NFTs, how VeVe has created in some circumstances artificial scarcity or value to comics, and where these pros see the comic book marketplace going in the weeks and years to come. So kind of open floor, gentlemen. Obviously, I know Andrei and I are very much here just to learn. I don't know how much we're going to be able to contribute to the conversation in that regard. But I guess just to kind of get the conversation started, we've only recently seen comic books on the VeVe app starting in, I believe it was August of this year with Marvel Month. Kind of give me your guys' overall sense of what you've seen come out of the circles that you're in and the feedback that you've been getting about just the adoption of digital comic books, which is something that we've really not seen before. And I'll leave it up to the floor. Whoever wants to go first, I'm completely open.
Yeah, Sean, if you could elaborate a little bit with respect to the significance of specifically the comic book. Obviously, you and Spencer and Sleepyn, you guys are more into that business and that industry, and so you guys can better answer that with respect to the actual how it relates to real world values. And I know you had presented us with respect to the grading and the availability of the numbers of the specific comic books that are available and the ones that are graded, and those particular grades and how that relates to the percentages of the editions. And how that relates to the values, or what we would call TMV, or true market values.
Yeah, I'll dive into that just one sec. The biggest thing that to answer Foster's question about just the community in general, I'm just really impressed with how many people have really become excited about comic books. The majority of people that have joined this space weren't really collectors before, and now they're obsessed. They're so excited. And we've had people contact us as much about physical comic books as digital, and that to me was the biggest surprise. The biggest surprise. I've had so many messages and screenshots that I've saved to show that people are pumped about collecting in general. So this, to me, this space is expanding. It's not going in one direction or the other, which is really, really exciting. Really, really pumped about it. But as far as the biggest thing for us is trying to figure out ways to connect the physical and digital world, specifically with comic books, because we have a physical counterpart to reference. I think about the statues. We're very high in the statues, but it's a bit speculative right now. We don't know exactly where they can go, and we don't really have much to reference. But with the comic books, we do, which is really exciting. So we've kind of organized some documents to kind of show the comparison, the real world comparison to the digital. So maybe would it be good to show that now, or should we?
Yeah, I wonder what and I'll be honest with you guys, and
Yeah.
new to streaming here. I'm wondering the best way to pull that up. I should be able to just
So if you
let me get a little creative here.
We'll get sliced to one side.
If you go to screen share, you can just you can pull that up on the saved document if you have it pulled up.
Yeah, let me keep talking about something. I'm gonna save them into documents in the background because you sent it to me in a Twitter DM, and all my DMs are gonna show up there and whatever. So I'll save it and then we'll pull it up into a separate screen share. But we'll figure it out here. Keep going, and I'll pull it up in a minute.
Yeah, is that showing up now? We just shared something.
Oh, did you guys share something?
Yeah, I think that.
Oh, I can do this. Hey, there we go. That works.
There we go. Now it's showing up. All right, cool.
Perfect.
Yeah, so what we did here is we basically lined up the physical market caps for the physical books to the market caps of the digital comic books to see if there was any comparison, if we could use that to relate.
I'm sorry, Spencer, can you just do me one huge favor?
Yes.
Can you just slow down? I know we're kind of like pressed for time. Just slow down in your speech. I'm souped up about learning a little bit more that I don't know, even though this is like even out of my range. I might be a psycho and insane, and I go through all of what I invest in getting like just right to the direct, but I come across you guys as my resources, and it's just easy for me to say, yeah, what do you think about the FF5? And you guys are like, get it now, and I'm just going to buy it like an animal. So this description of what you're about to say right now, just slow down so everyone could, as well as myself, and kind of is there a way Forza, you can kind of blow that up in a little bit, or is that the biggest font? Yeah,
I think so. I think they can zoom in on it, but it's kind of just it's shared with whatever size.
That's perfect. Yeah, if you can slice that over as we go. Go ahead, buddy. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. So pretty much what we did, trying to slow things down here. So we took the physical market caps. So if you look on the right side here, we calculated the physical market caps for the comic books on the CGC census. So basically, we took all of the grades and then all of the different labels for the book. So you have blue labels for just the regular books, purple labels for books that basically have had issues with them that have had to be restored, yellow labels for signature books. So we took all of these and lined it up, basically created a spreadsheet, and we're able to come up with an estimated market cap number based on the fair market values that are listed on a website called Go Collect. And Go Collect is a really amazing website that has just a lot of like past and historical sales data that allows you to make informed decisions on comic books. So we were able to do that to come up with an estimated market cap number. And I will say that these market cap numbers for physicals are actually very, very conservative because these only include the comic books that are included in the CGC census. So it doesn't include anything that is in the CBCS census, which is another grading company, or any books that have not been actually graded yet. So just raw copies that are sitting in people's houses.
So is the CGC more of the industry standard of the highest of the when something's graded and it goes through CGC? It's a little bit more like more of an accurate gauge or metric versus other grading companies.
Yeah, they're the most respected, definitely by far.
Okay,
but I'm a big fan of CBCS. They're owned by Beckett, and they're definitely coming up quick.
Mm-hmm.
They're definitely a solid second, and I respect the work they do too.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's just really just to say that these numbers here are very conservative for the physical market caps. These could very well be even potentially double, just because we don't have all of the data. But this is kind of what we were able to put together. And then what we did is then took the digital market cap. So we found the digital market cap basically by taking the floor price of each variant, all 5 variants for a given book, and then adding those up to come to a total number. So then looking at Fantastic Four #1, for example, the second one on our list here, we can see that the digital market cap is about 9% of the physical market cap, which in our eyes, that means that there is significant room for the digital to grow into what the physical is.
So essentially, the lower the percentage in respect to the comparison between the NFT, the digital NFT, and the real market comic, the probably the larger of the or the what would seem to be obviously more of a lesser. You have a higher chance of there's a lot more growth in the NFT with the lower of the percentage. Obviously, the higher of the percentage, then there's obviously you're too close to the comic book market, and there's not much room for growth in a sense of like long-term feasibility.
You know, we say that for now, but
Mhm.
the physical comic books, there is still a ton of room to grow for those comic books
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, so I wouldn't call that the ceiling whatsoever.
Right, yeah. The biggest problem is that these books are incredibly scarce, and there's so few of them, right? So like Fantastic Four, there's only 3 9.6 graded comics. There's no 9.8s known in existence. There's 3 9.6s, and if it's sold, it's estimated that it would sell for over $6 million. And if you have an option to buy with crypto, I think it way would exceed that.
Yeah.
It'd go way higher for sure.
So I have a question for you guys, because I think this is a great topic, and to the 210 people that are viewing right now live, thank you so much for stopping by and hanging out with us. And I hope you're able to get a lot of info and insight about the comics that we have, obviously here with a lot of great content providers who have a lot of inside information on this. I am kind of out in the weeds when it comes to comic books, and I'll be the first person to admit that. Like I'm hearing everything that you're saying, but at the same time, I'm kind of like. So I, as an example, own the Amazing Spider-Man #1 Secret Rare comic. I believe Andrei owns one as well. And I'm not sure if do any of you guys own it? Any of you guys?
I don't personally have one.
I don't.
No.
Definitely.
I try to buy the 282, the lowest SR from the guy in New Zealand, obviously for 100K, and he denied it. I actually got in touch with him. I'm not even lying. Less than like 4 days ago, I actually was talking to him, and the original offer was either 100,000 or 10,000. I'm sorry, 100,000 USD tether or a 10 million OMI. And I had somebody that was possibly interested at like a 7.5 million OMI, and he said just make it a cool 8 million OMI, and my source declined it. So.
That's crazy. So
this is real stuff happening, but on that particular one, that's it. The other one,
yeah. So I mean, I definitely think it's safe to say, based on these rankings, that's obviously one of the valuable comics. The reason that I use it as an example is it's really the only one that I can speak to, because I own it, and I guess I know about it as far as the fact that I own one. This breakdown, and we talk about percentage of the physical. Obviously grading takes into a factor with the physical, but grading is not something that we see being applicable for, or not necessarily that it's not applicable, but something that hasn't been applied as a standard currently for digital collectibles. And I'm curious, and not to kind of derail the conversation, because I think it's great, but if we can at some point talk about the implications that you guys see from a ratings perspective of digital collectibles. Will a mint number play into a higher rated version of a comic? Is that going to be the version of it's not the quality of the product, because we know that they remain 100% intact, but is it going to be the lower mint numbers get the highest grades? Is it going to work its way up? And then do you see things such as utility with collectibles? Obviously we're talking about comics specifically here, but when you can rent out these items through VeVe, when you can the fact that you can actually read this, like I can actually read my ASM #1 Secret Rare comic book. If I owned one right now, I probably wouldn't be reading it, because I wouldn't want to degrade the quality of it. Do these factors increase, in your mind, the value of a collectible on VeVe, decrease, or they're not applicable as an issue?
Yeah, Sean, I don't mean that I want you to address this. I just want to make a point. When I went to the New York Comic Con, I had made this noted on one of the other streams that when I was speaking to one of the guys, he was actually an old head, original OG guy. He didn't have one of his comics graded, everything, and he was totally against the grading. Now, when I had mentioned NFTs to him, was a whole nother world to him. He's like, I'm not even interested in any of that. He goes, I'm interested. You buy a comic and you read it. So the importance to him had to do with having not necessarily more to do with the values of the comics or what they were worth. He was more into the fact that, you had utility if you owned it without it getting graded. And the greatest thing about that argument is that if he just understood or was a little open-minded with understanding the digital concept of the digital world of the NFTs, you'd have the best of both. You can actually read, you can actually collect it, even if it's graded. It could be inside its plastic case, just being secured and safe, but at the same time, owning the NFT, you then could read it. And so, it's like, I try to make this a great point that these two businesses, they don't put each one another out. They complement each other. It makes both of these industries so much more bullish and more pumped. I mean, look, you guys obviously know these are my only 9 comics that I own. I showed you guys before. Okay. And I would have never have ever known to buy any of this stuff if I didn't, and I didn't get into the NFT space. And these are, of which, like, I didn't have no control over what comics that VeVe decided to put out, and when I was at the show, and I remember me, getting into the Avengers set, and I have obviously a very rare of that particular set, and owning this in that mint, in that grade, and it's off white to white, and that matters too. And so when you get these comics, it's great, it's nice, but that's all it does. It sits in there. Unless you're going to sell it, it's wasted. I don't want to say it's a waste of money, but it's a matter of what's the point? So if you can't read it, that's what comics were eventually, originally put out for. So now having it and having the capability of being able to read it, because not only I own it, but you have the best of both. So I own both. So
Yeah, definitely, and especially with comic collectors, they haven't really adopted the space yet. But if you really, if you look at the macro for specifically graded comics, at the end of the day, it's a comic that has similar covers, and the value is based on a number. So I think that's going to be really easy for comic collectors to adopt this space once they understand it.
Yeah,
they're going to be excited about it.
Yeah, Sean, you had a great a topic, and you really were you spent a lot of time trying to decipher and matching up grades, and CDC grading numbers with that of a particular mint sub 100 or sub 300 or sub 500. And you had a little calculation and that little formula, and I went over it a few times just to see. And I'll tell you, man, it's not that far off, man. It's actually dude. I know, Spencer. I know you had a hand in it, I'm sure, because you guys.
It's his idea.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sean.
Well, I know. I understand Sean's the face, but honestly, no. But,
I'm the brains,
and I know. Sleepyn. I know he's. You could just see what he's got in the background right there. That's impressive as it is.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
you guys have a lot more experience in this. But those particular metrics that you use to match up the grades on the comics with that of those particular, we could call them ranges in the NFT space, and those 100 number ranges or 50 or 200 ranges. Can you can you explain of that in a little bit more detail, because that's
definitely
important.
Yeah. So just I don't know if I have that ready, but either way, just in general, like investors and collectors specifically, they're always looking for ways to differentiate value, right? So looking at physical comic books, the way that you differentiate is based on a grading scale and the actual physical condition of that comic book. Whereas then you have NFTs, you need to look for different ways to differentiate. So you look at these like 10,000 avatar projects where they're all 10,000 of them are unique. You're able to differentiate which ones are better and which are more rare based on the rarity of those traits. So if one of them has a hat, and it's only 0.5% of the entire collection, then that's super rare, and then it goes for a premium compared to some of the other floor price avatars. Then looking at comics, these digital comics, the way that we see is the way to differentiate them is based on mint numbers. So we developed this whole system based on mint numbers, and we believe that, just like you, low mint numbers are actually what is going to have the most value, both low mint numbers and also special mint numbers. So what we did is we basically overlaid the CGC grading scale against the mint numbers for a given comic book, and using a percentage-based system, we're able to kind of align the two. So let's say that you have a book that's within the top 10% mint numbers of a whole collection. So let's say that there's 60,000 comic books, 60,000 editions for one comic. The top 10% would be 6,000 of them. So anything in that top 6,000 would be the equivalent in our eyes to a 9.0 graded book or higher, which is kind of like the top 10% of the CGC grading scale. So similarly, like a top 2% mint number for an entire collection would be equivalent to a 9.8 or graded book or better, which in most scenarios is the highest grade that you can get for a comic book. Occasionally you see a 9.8, 9.9 or a 10.0, but that's really only for more contemporary comics, and very, very rarely happens. So yeah, that's kind of the system that we've been using to assess comics. So when we look and buy in the secondary market and we're looking to buy low mint comics, I usually look, I'm going out of my way to find something that's within the top 2% so that it is, a 9.8 equivalent graded book. So yeah.
Since Marvel Comics 1 dropped, that was Spencer's focus. I mean, he said trying to focus on the top 5%. Top 2% if possible.
Top 2% if you can,
but top 5%, 100% top 5%. And that was our main focus since the beginning.
All right, so here's my question. And this obviously, it's, I don't want to say I already have the answer because I own the actual NFTs already, but I just won it when I had the opportunity. And so that just worked out for me. And I'm very fortunate. But this is very important because there's a lot of, obviously, on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, monthly basis. I'm sure, obviously, Andrei, you had expressed your concern, at least with respect to the significance of, having a low mint, and where does the value come from in the sense of, there's market value in the sense of what someone's going to pay for it. That doesn't make it its value. When we see the floor is really the value, because that's just to get into the space or to get into that particular NFT. You're going to pay that minimum. So it doesn't matter what the top guy is trying to sell it for 9 million for. If the bottom of floor is 10K, that's what it is. It's a 10K item. And that's why I see how you guys set up, that chart we just seen before. Those were calculated based on floors for market values. So I completely respect that. Now, when it comes to the actual percentages, which matters, and when you're saying so obviously, let's just say we talk commons because they came first. The commons are always the first in the set. Don't get me wrong. There are some oddities where you have an uncommon, a rare, I think as much as an ultra rare and as much as a secret rare have all been gifted. The algorithm has gifted them either the 201 or the 202 or the 501, which is like essentially the first released in that particular set. So that brings even more of a premium because not only is it not a common, it's already a scarce item because those particular editions were already rare, but it's actually getting, the early and lowest of the mint numbers. So it's kind of like it's a compound effect there. So that's important. And so why I say that is because, like, for instance, let's just take the MC1, for instance. We'll just use that example. 501 was the first one that was released. It was a common. Okay. Now, granted, there were 48,000. There was a lot of editions that were put out. However, the 501 still is, there's an argument to say, well, would you rather have the 501 common or would you rather have a floor of a secret rare? And this argument, I don't want to say argument, a debate. I get this all the time. And I get it. A lot of people ask me, and it's not just MC1. Obviously, it's more for other sets. They're like, well, should I just go for a floor SR because they're so damn rare? There's only 500 or 400 or 250. Or should I go for like a 201 or a 501 or 202? So, for me, answering that question, I don't have those particular calculations like you guys have created your own little formula for it. But it's a great debate because, when you talk about a 9.8, you're talking about the top 2%. So if you're talking about the top 2% of, let's say, for instance, the Avengers set, it was a 10K edition. So it started at 200. Well, arguably that was a freak nature set. I think I got a 148, a 149, and a 150 were the first three items, and they all came in different variants for that set. It didn't start at like 200, but let's just say for argument's sake, it was that. So, which one falls into that parameter of, top 2%? And does it bring that same premium? Because they're matched on different variants. You understand what I'm saying? It's not like, yeah.
I mean, I think they both do. So it's just a different variant of the same book. So, you have you think of like a 0.5 grade, that would be like the floor price, right? So it would be like a super high mint collectible. And so for that one book, so maybe it's the original cover, you still have the top 2% for that cover. But then for every other variant as well, you still have a top 2% for that variant. And so, when it comes to the secret rare, there may only be one that falls in that top 2%. But it's, the same thing. It's like you have a floor price for that variant. And then the way that we see it is that a lower mint number just gives it a higher premium over that kind of floor price.
So regardless of the variant,
I think that.
Sorry, guys. I just wanted to interject because I think it's a really good conversation, and I don't want, because it's a very high level conversation, and I think it's important to clarify what other people are saying and to make sure that they're not kind of left behind. So Zero Cool brings up an interesting point in the chat. He says, what you guys are saying doesn't make sense. Now, I'm not saying that it doesn't make sense. Maybe it doesn't make sense to him, or in general, that's fine. But he's saying comic mints are random across all variants. So this kind of goes back to Daniel's donation, and you guys touched on it a little bit, but I just wanted some clarification from, and maybe I'll ask Sleepyn, because, you know, he's, I love him, but I can tell he's too nice to say anything if I don't call on him directly.
He's sleeping.
Yeah, so I'm gonna ask
sleeping,
him,
yeah.
and then we'll open it up to the rest of the floor. But I'm
gonna jump backwards actually for a second, because we were talking about the market cap, which I think is an interesting. I mean, it's difficult, but it's a good barometer for us. But because everybody obviously is asking us again and again, especially if you're not a comic book collector, you know, is this a good one? And when they say, is this a good one? They're asking only one thing. If I buy low, am I going to be able to sell this for more? Because people are looking at these comics, and not everybody, but most of the people are looking at these comics as investments. I mean, we could just rename all of them A, B, C, D, and E, W, C, S, and, you know, put a stick figure on every single one of them. But because of their relationship with, you know, the physical comic, and I would say the relationship to a character that has been in, you know, historical movies, you know, books, etc., that gives it a little bit more traction, which of course is why VeVe is such an interesting project, because it has so many of these licenses that have been, you know, have real historical value. But so I think that when we're looking at it, the market cap, when you look at it from the perspective of comics, does give you an indication. So I can't remember what it was for Marvel Comics 1, but you know, no one knows, but if you had like a 9.0 or whatever of the whatever Marvel Comics 1, I'm sure it'd sell for probably $5 million or something like that, maybe more. We don't know. So the market cap for Marvel Comics 1 is what? We don't know. 20 million? Because there's just not many of them. There's 69 million of them. But this is where the market cap kind of fails us, because and the 9.8 versions all fail us, is because, for example, Ultimate Fallout 4, First Miles Morales, it's a modern book. Most of them are 9.8. Whereas when you look at an older book, for example, like Marvel Comics 1, hardly any of them. I mean, the highest graded one might be a 9.0. So the grades get really goofy there when you try to equate them with the real world. But the market cap is interesting, but even that fails us, because look at the market cap there's only 68 of those things. So if they each sell for, you know, 5 million, 4 million, you know, 1 million, and then a bunch of them sell for 500,000, the market cap's going to be, because there's only 68 of them, the market cap's going to be, you know, $30 million. You look at Ultimate Fallout 4 at a print run of 48 or 84,000. You find a raw one, you'll be $350. You know, there's 10,000 graded at 2,000. So I mean, its market cap's like 50 million. So it has a bigger market cap than MC1. So then does that mean Ultimate Fallout 4 is a more valuable comic than Marvel Comics 1? So I'm just saying these are issues, but I think that we want to look at it from the perspective of, I look at the market cap numbers and the CGC to give us an indication of demand, because that goes back to what people are saying. Is this a good one? They always ask me, it's the same question. Is this a good one? Which basically just means, if I get this thing for $7, am I going to be able to sell it for something more than that? And I mean, obviously we each have our tiers and spreadsheets and all kinds of other things, but I think that the Go Collect, and there's other ones like GP Analysis and other ones that people use, just give us an indication of what the demand could be, especially when you're looking at physical comic book collectors, which are kind of, you know, crazy people. But what I would say, but just to back up to the more topic that we ended up in the end, which is the grading. I have said on my channel that I mean, it's fun and it's easy to grade 9.8s and, you know, the 0 through 10 that we've seen in physical comics. I think we need something completely new. I think that, sorry, my phone is ringing. I think that it's something completely different is needed here. And the reason why I said this on my channel is because we're looking at 3 different kind of vectors and we're trying to like put them into one. Whereas comics, it's just like one comic. So the vectors are this. The vectors are it's the different variant, you know, is it the secret rare, you know, etc. That's 1. 2 is it's the mint number. that's a problem. You know what I mean? And then the last thing, of course, is the comic. What, you know, we have different comics and whatever. But when it's too jumbled up, so we need to figure out like one label to explain all of that. And the value, if the label works, then we'll be able to get value out of that one label. So for example, if I say 9.6 in the comic book world, that label gives us information. Whereas if you say mint number 579, that label actually doesn't give you information, because it gives you the information of where it is in the run from, let's say there's 50,000 of them, from 0 to 50,000, but it doesn't give you the indication of where it lies within that particular variant or that particular rarity. So that's why what I've tried to do is I'm trying to get a directory of all the mints, and people have been donating their mints. So I appreciate that. So in other words, I could say to you, so some of the data I've collected is that, since we're talking about Marvel Comic 1, the secret rare, the first one that I have found that lots of people sent me numbers, is 599. The next one is, this guy owns 762. I don't know who he is. And then 1500, 1727, 1778. So that is valuable, and I'll have it directory, it would be public for everybody to see, because then they can make buying decisions on understanding where their mint is within their rarity. But I think even understanding that percentage is going to be meaningful. My phone is blowing up, so I better get it. I'll be right back.
Yeah, no, you're good. I think that's a great conversation. I want to, because I know a lot of you guys have a lot of good feedback, I want to hear from Andrei, because I know he's been doing his best to absorb all of this information. Andrei, quite a few people are happy to have you here, so thank you obviously for joining us. And I'm just trying to find the question itself, and of course it's eluded me because so many people are doing such a great job of interacting.
All right, thanks for having me. I actually have a ton of questions myself, but I liked what Sleepy said as far as establishing more of an objective value system. So as a person who's like, I would consider myself very much a lay person in this world, especially in the comic book world. Like, I don't understand much about it. And so I understand the significance of low mint numbers, but what I guess I don't understand is, where does that line begin? As, like, take for example, a person who doesn't understand anything about this world. Like, this is a very high level discussion, but like for the person who's like the average person, like let's take me, who doesn't understand much about the NFT comic world. What is a significant low mint number? Is it the top 10? Is it the top 20? Is it the top 50, top 100? I don't know. And so I'm wondering if there's a guideline that we can establish that that kind of applies to anyone, regardless of like what they think, like without trying to teach them the value system. And the closest thing that I'm coming up with is kind of like what we're seeing with meme investing, where it's like, you know, significant numbers like 420, 69, 777, numbers that people can relate with and be like, well, I understand why that number is significant. So from maybe a safety perspective, you know, from managing risk, that's almost like the blue chip mint numbers, I guess, if maybe that's fair to say. So that's something that I would always find fascinating. Or like when I got the Spider-Man, which Foster, you helped me out with, it was, I think, 0862, which is, you know, August 1962, the year that and the month that comic came out. It was the first time that people saw Spider-Man. So that was significant to me. That seemed to make sense. But like just saying, hey, this is a low mint number, it's number 120, that tells me, the average person, nothing in relation to anything else. What? So maybe from a really high, like a high level where you guys understand what that means, there's liquidity. But as far as like the overall broad market, it's very difficult to establish liquidity based on a very subjective low number, which means nothing to most people. So like what is the good middle ground there?
What I have proposed, and once again, this is not whatever, I'm just got to make up something so someone can iterate on it, right? Is I have, you know, 10 or seven different labels. So if you could grade a comic, you can't grade a comic, but if you could grade a digital comic, it would get this label. So for example, the labels are 50p, 25p, 10p, and 5p. The P stands for percentage. So if this comic got, you know, it's a Marvel Comics 1 50p, that means it's in the top 50% of all mints. And the 50p is very easy for people to say. A 5p would mean it's in the top 5% of all mints. So that label would mean something to someone. Because once again, if you say to someone, I have a 5p comic, they're going to be like, whoa, that's serious. And then the last labels are top 500, top 100. You drop the P, you don't have the P, meaning like you literally have one of the top 500 or top 5 or top 500, top 100. Top 100 means you have one of the top 100 mints of that particular comic. And that's meaningful to people, rather than saying, I have mint number 4391, which they don't even know what the maximum mint is. So 41,000 actually might be impressive if there were 1 million mints. So that's why this P and these in the top 500, I think, would be meaningful. My intent is to make this website, and then people could put it all in, and then they could look at their comic, and then the verbiage when you would talk to it, you know, people on Twitter Spaces, they're talking to their friends or whatever, is I have, you know, Amazing Spider-Man 1 top 100. And they'll be like, whoa, you have like a top 100 mint. That's like crazy, dude. You're awesome, whatever, right? Now, a lot of people on my channel have said, you know, this is great. We like this, except what you guys just mentioned is what happens if you have 1964, which is, you know, the first year of Spider-Man. Well, 1963, 1964. I can't remember.
I think 1962.
But that's a significant mint also. And so you could come up, my idea was that it would have the P and it would add an S. So let's say you had 1964, and that would still, let's say that puts it in the top 25%, but you would add an S for special. So it would be 25PS. And so if you had an S on your label, that would mean it's a highly significant. Now you'd still have to research that, right? You'd have to research, but when you saw that S, you would know that, wow, this is really a special one. I know you got, you know, Comics and Crypto did one with a Walt, or, you know what I mean? So that would be my take on it. It's come up with a new, that's what I mean by, I think the CGC old school, like 9.8, 9.6, it's just not, it's not right for us. Like we have way more data that we have to tell people.
Right. Well, here's kind of an interesting example. So I have a PSA 10 Shadowless Charizard, right? Now, Logan Paul popularized the first edition version of that card, you know, and that card sells for like $500,000, whereas the Shadowless one without the little stamp sells for, let's say, whatever, 120,000, whatever it might be. The funny thing is, though, that it's actually, as far as the percentage goes, the Shadowless editions are actually 3 times more rare in terms of quantity. And so even knowing that, like as a sophisticated Pokemon investor, I know that my version is 3 times as rare as Logan's is, but the market value for his is 3 times more. And so again, on the highest echelon of the industry, we might know these meanings and numbers and S and P's and whatever we might come up with. But like, I guess as far as applying it to most people, which might ask you like, is this good? I wonder if there's just like a super basic way of doing it. Like, I think a market cap's a really good example of gauging the popularity of something, where it's like, you know, this is like the blue chip tier. It's stable. You're not speculating much. Everyone likes Spider-Man or whatever it might be. Like, that's one of them. Like, what's
cryptocurrency is set up like that. The coins have their market cap. I mean, nothing like just like, I mean, companies, there's always a market cap as some kind of a metric that's being that it's not necessarily as from a grading standpoint. It's just information. You know, I mean, obviously there's different parameters because obviously it goes by the amount of the supply and that goes by the price and stuff. So there's things that make that difference. But from an investment point, I mean, what makes the market value is just like I made this point before. As a matter of fact, I might have been in Vegas when I was talking to you, Foster, about there was 2 points. One was as soon as the drop happens, immediately, it's not like we have a price guide and people just start throwing it up on. It's really a test market. So you're really just testing to see who the hell is really willing to pay, and people are just going in and out of the app, gauging a lower or they're raising it higher because they see their mint number. Oh, look at that guy. He's got it for $5,000. Oh, you know what? I'm going to put a little higher because they got a lower mint number. And then the market kind of finds itself. And then it's got this, equilibrium of it just creates its own floor. And some floors are 1,000, some are 500, some are 3,000. I know the Fantastic Four edition of 5 with Doom on it, that comic, it came out right away. It was like 600, 700 on the floor. now it's like $3,000. And I know, and now that's a very short time. And it's not like, it wasn't like the Avenger set where it was like a 10K edition. You know, I was like, that came as a very high, what is it, 60 or 70,000 edition as a high gauge. Not only that, but the other thing that I had mentioned, and then we're talking comics, and this has to do with low mints, because we talk low mints. Collectibles come along with this argument. You know, it's not just about, you know, how comics relate. And I had made this mention, and this is very important, that, you know, if we have, because, you know, like baseball players, a lot of, you know, say just sports players, you know, they might have some kind of a collectible that comes out that represents them, and they'll autograph it, and it might be like 500 in the run, or there might be 600 or 1,000 in the run, or 2,000, and there'll be a number on it of, you know, 1 out of, you know, 1,000, 64 out of 1,000, 125 out of 1,000. Maybe their number that they have, that they play their jersey, is a special one because it's their number or whatever. But yeah, obviously, no, 1 is always going to bring premiums higher than number 942 of 1,000, and number 2 is going to be bringing a higher a premium than number 841. You know what I'm trying to say? So I kind of, you have to understand the relationship between, like, getting a Walt 41 or a Walt 45 or Walt 47 or whatever else. It's going to bring a bigger premium than a Walt, you know, 600 or 800.
Here's what I'll say. Like, I don't mean to be pessimistic. I'm really bullish on the market, like long term, but short term, it's one of those things where I equated to like PSA 9 cards in Pokemon and PSA 10s, right? The difference in price is 10x. But what's interesting is that if you're somebody who is going to try to sell your Charizard PSA 9 for, let's say, $50,000, which some people have tried, the problem is anyone who's going to spend or could afford to spend $50,000 on essentially a piece of paper is not going to settle on the 9. They're going to go for the 10. And so therein lies the gap of uncertainty, where which is the 10 and which is the 9. Like 45 objectively is an extremely low mint number. But is a person who could spend $100,000 on a 45 going to go for the 45, or are they going to go for the top 10 or whatever it might be? So that's what I'm saying with, like, at least Pokemon cards. My thesis is PSA 9s, or I'll stick to Pokemon, PSA 9s, they kind of have a cap. They have a limit, a ceiling, if you will. Because again, a normal person who is not going to be able to spend $50,000 on a Charizard. And the person that can is not going to bother. They're not going for the 9 and spending 50. They're going for the 10 and spending 100 or whatever it might be. And so again, it's so subjective to get into the serial numbers that I think ultimately, I don't know if we'll know in the short term what the market will find value. I think I saw a few comments highlighted of people saying, I don't care what the number is as far as like what VeVe designated. I care what the actual on-chain number is. So maybe we find out that the numbers we think we have might be completely different. And that's what the market finds valuable.
I actually put that question up, Andre. I wanted to know if these particular mint numbers represented the number in line that they were minted on the chain.
Yeah, right. That's a great question.
Is that the case? Because that was my argument from day one when I actually asked that, and no one ever was able to answer that for me.
That's a great question. The point is, there are so many variables that we could sit here and argue until our face turns blue about like what will be valuable. But there has to be some format that we can get to that will 90% of the way, that'll get us 90% of the way there. And the other 10% is kind of like ultra high market. I'm talking about like Mr. Pags, what you have, right? Like the lowest number tiers, like that's, but like for the 90% of people, I think it's a combination of obviously the popularity of the character. It's the secret rare, like the rarity actually, and maybe a special mint number like the 420, the 666, whatever it might be, right?
Yeah. Listen, I always made the argument, and I always try to say, because Sean has helped me from the day one and getting into this. Anytime I need something, he's like my go-to guy, and I've always respected anything that he has said. I've invested because of what he has said, and I'm actually up significant amount, tens of thousands of dollars, almost 30,000, maybe more than that, just off of his just straight up advice on purchases. And I'm going to say that, you know, as transparent as I could be. And I appreciate it, Sean, because there's many times where I could have pulled flipped the switch on something else, and I would have made nowhere near that. And that's just kind of what you're saying. Hey, you're not sure, you're a beginner. You don't really know what's going on. That's where I kind of lay. That's why for me, there's so many questions about like low mints, and this is what this conversation is about. But for me, I'm rooted in when I started collecting anything when I was a kid, and that was baseball cards. And it had to do with not the cards. It was about, I was collecting the sets. It's about the sets that made the value. It didn't matter that you had Don Mattingly's rookie in 1984 or Darryl Strawberry's rookie or Dwight Gooden's rookie, because if you had them, they were nice. But having the whole entire set and having them in a sealed case, that's where the premiums were. And that's what I was into. I always thought that, listen, I got the mint set, I got the card automatically in there, so it doesn't matter. But, with respect to the way that I'm collecting this and how I started, I went right to collecting the entire set because I looked at the variance and I'm like, wait a minute, there's 48,000, there's 30,000, there's 5,000, there's 8,000 of the commons, but there's only 250, 400, and 600 or 500 of that secret rare. Holy crap, wait a minute. As many commons as there are, they're not going to make that many. They're not going to be capable of making that many sets. So if there's only 600 arguably MC1 SRs, that's as many sets as full sets there could possibly ever be. Right. So the value may be not necessarily in where it would matter more for the actual individual item for the mint number. I think it matters for the fact that if you have 3 of the 5, but you only collected 3 of the 5 because you couldn't get the other ones, you couldn't afford the other ones, having the whole entire set will bring more of a premium than 3 guys. 3 of say you have a common, a rare, and an ultra rare. You just couldn't get the uncommon and you couldn't get the secret rare. But there's a guy that's got off, and you have low mints, and you got the lowest mints of those 3. But here we go. Here's another guy. He don't have low mints on those 3, but he's got all 5.
Right.
He's got the full set.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
I hit it on both tiers. I got low mints of the whole entire set. I figure, you know what? Any angle this comes out, I'm trying to win-win situation. That's where my passion came in. But with respect to like to try to diagnose which one has, like, you guys are all making great points, and maybe VeVe could come out with like a price guide like baseball cards used to have. And there was a price guide used to buy, and it had all of the listed items and every
tracking past sales would be huge. Tracking past sales is really what's going to help us.
We don't even know where our mint numbers lay. Like, it would be great if we had commons and we knew every single mint number of each individual variant.
That's what I'm trying to do.
I think this will be.
Once Immutable X is out, all that data will be public.
That's great. That's what I'm saying.
Are we 100% sure of that?
Oh yeah. And all that stuff it's all in the metadata of the NFT. So all that stuff is going to be public, and all you have to do is write a script really and just pull down all the data, and then you can look at all at once.
So see that, Foster? I told you it was coming along. I knew it would come along.
Sorry. I know Sleepyn wanted to say something there, but I know Andrei is a little pressed for time. I think he had to run for something going on there. So, Andrei, do you have any more questions before you end up taking off, or did you end up being able to make some more time? Or
I'm learning a lot. I like
it is a lot.
What Mr. Pag said about like having a complete set. Perhaps that could be another thing that you find value in. Like, for example, my Pokemon set, there's like, I think a 15 Chansey PSA 10. So I know for a fact there can only ever be 15 complete sets that could ever be assembled. There's definitely value in knowing that. But I will say though, as far as like, I mean, I think I've made money on like every NFT that I've purchased from VeVe. And I think most of us could say that. I think everyone who's ever bought at MSRP value will say that they've made money. But even I bought Spider-Man at $12,000, which was the floor at the time. And I think the floor is significantly higher now. But even though I've made money, I'm still not like euphoric, like, wow, look, I've made money, because I still think there's a big issue about liquidity, number one. And even though you could say that on paper you've made money, it's a very different thing to have the liquidity to sell. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen Bored Apes, about how some people have Bored Apes and they want to sell them for 50 to 100 Ether. It's like 400 grand. Yeah, good luck selling it for that. Good luck having someone find that ape with your specific trait qualities and pay you 400 grand. What does that mean? That means there's low liquidity in the market, which means it's kind of up in the air what your thing is worth. And so personally, and I know it's going to sound like I'm pessimistic about it. I'm not. I just want to caution people in saying that I think 90% of the value, 99% of the value will concentrate in the highest like 1% tier of collectibles, which is yet to be seen where those will be. And the rest, I think, especially if the crypto market, I mean, takes a dip, which eventually it will, that's the, you know, cycle levels that we go through. I think most of them, and they'll be the first to go, like they'll lose 90% of their value. And then we'll be left wondering like, oh, like what happened? I don't know. Liquidity is going to go out the window. So you have to be very careful about like how you invest the money in this space, I think. And as far as like low mint numbers, to me, it seems like 20, 30 years from now, we'll look back at this and be like, well, when I was young, I saw VeVe and I bought the first NFT. And that's when it'll be significant to be like, wow, that was the first 100. We've got millions of them now. Then it'll be significant. But like right now, we're going through a huge hype cycle. And I just want to make sure that we're careful about like saying like, look, this is the 55th. It's rare. It's
contrary, not to, I do agree with a lot what you just said in respect to caution, because that's definitely important. However, I do want to make this a point. Obviously, every single day that goes by, there's more and more people that are coming aboard. In other words, there's more people coming aboard VeVe and the VeVe platform than what's VeVe's producing in the particular products that they're putting out for sale. And so you're right. I always said there was going to come a point in time where we kind of get to a point where we look at our collection like maybe we have, you know, what was everybody going to have like 10,000 collectibles and 8,000 sets? Like, you know, it's good. You're right. It gets to a point where it becomes like, I don't want to say illiquid, but kind of diluted in that sense, even though it's very not diluted in the sense of the people. As people just obviously a higher age group and a lower age group just keeps coming aboard every year. But to bring the point of the actual, what was I going to say? I'm sorry. You had made a mention about
I'm just going to say, who would collect thousands of something? That'd be the dumbest idea of all time. You'd have to put them somewhere and put them on your walls and stuff. It's a joke, man.
Yeah, there's an argument. Everybody, I mean, even the MC1 Commons, I mean, they went on a little run right now. People are buying, 50, 100, these whales, everybody's coming in. There's a little manipulation maybe happening. I know I get.
What are they right now, Pegs? Are they like 250 for a common or something?
They keep flowing between 2 and 250. I see up there. I mean, it's even floating. I even seen it float a little higher than the uncommon. Whatever. I mean, listen, if this is all I'm trying to say, as long as it doesn't matter how illiquid or liquid the thing is, as long as there's someone, because look, even if it took a dip, because obviously the MC1 took a dip, the Avenger 8 Kang SR took a dip, but look what has happened. It's gone back up, and they gone up significantly, and there's always someone there to spend the 29 or 26 or 30,000 right on those low floors to pick it back up again, and then there you go back up. We have a 43 or 49K, and there's only a couple in there before we get to like 50K or 60K. So our floor can go right to 60K just in a minute. I think when we get to a better exchange, a better platform, and when we get on layer 2, I think when we have the interoperability and VeVeverse comes, I think the utility of a lot of the items and all this stuff is going to start to matter. And I think we have more countries coming aboard, more countries coming aboard VeVe.
Yeah,
I think it'll start to pan itself out. I mean, this is just my opinion. I'm just telling you, I think, you can be pessimistic and optimistic. Everybody's got their own opinion, but I think the realistic view here is that, MC1 was the very first one that was put on, right? The Fantastic Four came along. They're still sitting there. There's still 50, 60,000 comics still sitting there. And listen, if people really care and they really need money, they'd put it up for sale and they'd sell it for cheap just to get the money.
Yeah.
They're not doing it. They want to hold it.
I do like what you said about utility, because that's, I think, one way that's in our control to add a lot of value to these collectibles. Is like, that's something I want to do, and that's something I still want to hear from like the community, which is like, how do we add value to it? And so I was thinking like, maybe I'd take some of my favorite collectibles and say like, hey, if you own this, you can come to my house and we'll have a party at my house at Christmas or something, or New Year's, whatever it might be. Like that's such a cool part about that. I think that's ultimately where a huge part of the value will come from, is like, how many like private secret clubs can I be a part of by owning this one thing, right? And that's within our control. And that, I think, is a huge thing. That
I mean, I got more OMI than you, so I'm going to have more money. I'll have a bigger house. So you'll come over my house. That's how I look at
Okay,
it.
I have a question for comics and crypto in
I'm
Sleepyn
just kidding,
Comics.
Andre, bro. It's all fun,
I
man.
feel like
Oh,
it's very relevant to the conversation and kind of the points that I think both Pegs and Andre were bringing up. So, we're talking about trying to establish a rating system for value for specific comics. And we're trying to determine, is it a specific mint number or what makes things valuable? Something that I've noticed that VeVe does a good job of is engaging people in fandoms or in specific items of a fandom that you wouldn't initially think you'd be interested in, but then just based on one factor or another that they rejig, they are able to kind of add exclusivity and value to it. Pegs, I know you have your opinions on it, but I want to give Sleepyn and Comics and Crypto podcast Spencer and Shot a chance to comment first, because I know you own them and I know you'll have an opinion of it. But as a perfect example, the first comic that ever came out, Marvel Comics #1, 60,000 editions. It's the only run that I think we've ever had of 60,000, or maybe it's one of two. There was a couple at the beginning, I think, that came out
There's
at
been a lot.
60,000.
Yeah.
Okay. So there was a couple, but I mean, it was the big one.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, we see as an example, I think the average right now that we're probably getting is a 30,000, but then we're also seeing the occasional, ultra rare, exclusive 10,000 edition comic. And, as someone who doesn't know anything about comics, I just go, it's got less editions, it must be more valuable. And case in point, and I want to drive this home to the 322 people that are watching this live right now, or anyone that's watching it back afterwards, is exclusivity does not necessarily equate to value. And the reason, a perfect example of that is when the Givenchy drop came out. And Pride had the most editions out of everything that was being dropped. I ended up going for the Amelia Earhart, and I remember telling my wife at the time, I went for this because it had half of the amount of editions as the Pride. So logically speaking, it had less editions. Ergo, if the same amount of people want it, it will be more valuable. So that was the thought process that I went into when I bought that. Now, I also sold it for like $400, and we saw what happened to Amelia. So take that with a grain of salt. But we also saw what happened with Pride. And we can see quite clearly that although Pride has more editions, it is much more coveted and valued. Now, I know it's the only one officially licensed by Givenchy, and there's some other factors associated with it, but I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts on, as an example, the Avengers Kang. 10,000 editions. Does that edition run automatically make that common collectible, more valuable than a Spider-Man or a Fantastic Four or a Marvel that have, 30 or 60,000 editions? How do you guys feel about VeVe kind of artificially modifying or driving value to collectibles by scarcity? And do you think that it's going to cause like a bubble or anything with people FOMOing into these comics because they're rare and then realizing that they're not really worth anything in real life? So whichever one of you two wants to start.
Go ahead. I have some thoughts, but go ahead. You guys go ahead.
Just an example. So like you said, Avengers 8, Kang the Conqueror. So like looking at our market cap numbers, so we found a $6.4 million market cap for the entire, 10,000, including all the rarities. And then you compare that to Marvel Comics 1 with 60,000 editions. So 6 times the edition size, and its market cap is 36.6 million. The market cap is 6 times the size with, 6 times less editions. You know what I mean? So, I think it's way more important, the actual significance of the comic and significance of the character that's featured in that comic than the actual scarcity of that comic itself.
Yeah, and especially Marvel Comics #1. I mean, there's only 63 physical copies on the CGC census. That's it, 63. So between that and Secret Rares, there's only 663 in existence. And that's crazy. And that comic, it has a lot of historical value, but it doesn't really have any pop culture value. And that's what VeVe has brought to this comic. It's the first ever NFT comic dropped by Marvel. So it is now surrounded in pop culture history. And people are excited about it. People are really pumped about this comic. And I mean, we have no really reference to the physical side because there hasn't been a lot of sales.
Yeah.
So really, I mean, the sky's the limit for the digital side.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And another is that like Hitmonkey, like people have been going crazy after Hitmonkey because there's only 10,000 of them. Yet it's a very insignificant character. Yeah, they just released a series on Hulu, but like it's nowhere near some of these other books.
Yeah, it doesn't have the IP similar to these other characters.
I didn't even collect that set. I actually
we didn't either. Yeah.
I own a 204 rare. I got it real cheap. It was, I don't know how the hell I got it. I don't know and it was given to me practically. And
Yeah.
I just,
But yeah,
Yeah,
these characters are they're very contingent on the MCU, on the popularity of the characters in the MCU. So like King the Conqueror, I think that book will do well because that character is going to be a very significant villain coming to the MCU. And Fantastic Four #1, for example, he's not even close to as popular. Those four characters not even close as popular to Spider-Man right now. Spider-Man's the most popular character in the entire world by far. But Fantastic Four is a film coming to the MCU in a couple of years, and it's also directed by John Watts, who directed the Spider-Man films. And it's going to be massive. They're going to be very popular because they are going to make sure that they are centered in the MCU. So that's why I'm very high on Fantastic Four, because long term it's going to do very well for that reason. Because in the comic book world, it's very popular. It's considered a grail. It's the first Marvel comic ever, the first collaboration between Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, and so that's going to translate. That's going to translate well in a couple of years.
Screen? Can someone throw that on screen just for the people who don't know what we're referring to, what it looks like? The comic book itself.
Yeah, 1 second.
which one?
The one we're
Fantastic
talking about.
Oh,
Will they pull that up and Sleepyn? Obviously, I'll let you get your opinion in first about what we're discussing, but afterwards, I want to segue because I think it's an important point because Sean's indicating, there's only 600, secret rare Marvel Comics #1, and then on top of the CGC census. But I'm curious to get your thoughts after we get through this part of the conversation. I just know I'll forget if I don't mention it now. What I've heard anyways, and from what I understand, the common cover variant is the cover of the real world comic. So I'm curious afterwards, similarly to how we see VeVe, take the most popular character and make it the common in a set because they know it's going to sell out. And then the least popular character, they'll make it the ultra rare or whatever because they still want people to buy it. But adding that artificial exclusivity and rarity makes it more valuable. After we get Sleepyn's comments on kind of this topic here, I'm curious if you guys can provide some context into that as well, because like you said, we've seen that the common Marvel Comics #1 pump to, $200, $250, and it has 48,000 editions. And that's pretty incredible when you think about it, when that's the actual cover that people are going to be sought after. And I do wonder if some of these secret rares that people are chasing after just based on scarcity, are real comic book collectors who, are using this app, but don't recognize the secret rare because it's not the comic that they're used to seeing in real life. Does that hurt the value of some of these secret rare comics? Because outside of VeVe, it's not the comic book, if you guys know what I mean. Like it's a different cover. It's not the same comic, even though, it's officially licensed and all of that, granted. But I'm curious to kind of get your thoughts on that afterwards as well. But sorry to interrupt. Continue what you were doing.
I mean, I can talk to that for a second. So, and these guys might know the date, but so when you're there's different ages of comics. There's like the golden age, the silver age. And it's just, it's just a year. But so it wasn't until the modern era, and I actually don't know the date, but because Marvel and all the comic book publishers in their infinite wisdom, they needed more money. They were like, how do we get people to buy this comic more than once? And so what they did is they release different variants of the cover. It's the same comic, but they have different variants. I think it started, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago. I don't even know. Before that, so it's literally the same one. It's first print. They come out with 3 different covers of the first print. Before that, so if you rewind it, 5-10 years, the only time you would get different covers, they only came out with one cover. The only time you get a different cover is if it was the second, third, and fourth print. And oftentimes, even back then, the second print would look basically, in a lot of cases, exactly like the first print, and you would have to open it up and look in like the first page to see that it's a second print. So, so you're right with all of these Golden Age and Silver Age. So those are the older comics like Fantastic Four or Marvel Comics. They only had one cover. And so they have fabricated covers, you've seen ones that are black and white or ones that have a bit of color. And then of course the secret rares are a VeVe exclusive cover that they have generated. I think, and I'm not as concerned about what, of course I want physical comic book collectors to come in and make their decisions, but they're going to do what they want. And this, it's already established that this audience, has found value in each of these covers. Now, I will say that we have seen an interesting thing happen over, especially the past 2 or 3 weeks, where the uncommon is not as valuable as the common. The commons are exceeding the uncommons, but we won't get into that for now. That's an interesting discussion. But I do believe that in the end, people will find value in the different variants, and it will probably follow the rarity. That's my take on it. I'm open to anybody can tell me that, but so I do think that the secret rares will be worth the most, and I think that the commons will be the least amount. Now, let me just, what were we talking about before? I can't remember what we were talking about before, but it doesn't matter.
Okay, question for you, Sleepy. Which one would be more valuable? The iconic variant, the iconic cover that is this. Sorry, you probably won't be able to see it. Hold on, let me hide my face. So the one that's exactly shown right in the middle of the screen right there, the second one, right? That in low edition or some significant edition, like maybe the year it came out, or would it be the secret rare right there? Like
the secret rare lowest edition.
Yeah.
So I mean, millions. I think every person here has been asked that question. Probably everybody in the chat wants to know that question, and I don't think we know. I think that what I want to do is collect data on it, and I think, we're gonna be able to get eventually historical data on. We can see the floors, but those are not sales. Like, we need hard sales. We need to know that the secret rare, 132 mint sold for X, and then we can answer that question. And of course, we're just looking at trends. Maybe Fantastic Four, it goes this route, but Marvel Comics 1 goes this route. So, but we're always looking at trends. I think we need more data, and I just can't answer that question. But actually, the guy who would probably know is right here. Pegs would actually know, because he has experience in it. I have no experience in that. So maybe we should ask him, because he actually has real world experience in what sells and what secret rare and mints, and is a common worth more than a secret rare at a certain point.
No, I'm not gonna listen. I have no. I'm being honest with you. For me, I'm like, I don't really care too much about data. I believe in, all or nothing. Like, for me, it's get the low mints and get the whole set, and let the industry decide what it wants to do. I got both ends of the stick, so I could care less. It's not like I'm trying to be ignorant. It's like, you know what? I'm not here in a guessing game. If I'm putting significant amount of my money out of my pocket into something, I don't want to have to sit here and say, oh, wait, hold up. Maybe I feel bad for people. They're over there trading. I see them trading waltz for Spider-Man SRs and Spider-Man SR, for waltz, and they're going back. Like, I'm saying to myself, these people are absolutely out of their mind. They're getting SRs. They're like, I'll give you 2 waltz for. They're asking me. They want my SR. They want my MC1 SR, the 762. They're like, yeah, I'll give you 3 waltz and a pizza truck. And I'm like, what are you nuts, guys? It's look. Do I have a number? Listen, Andre, if you wrote me a check right now and you were like, Henry, I want your whole MC1 set, $1 million. Truthfully, I'd probably take it, and I would have to consider it. But it might be something that I'm not saying I would do it. I'm just saying it's something I would consider. But 500,000? Listen, I was offered 6 figures. I'm not going to tell you the number for the whole set already, and it was over 100,000. Easy. I declined it. I mean, it's fair to say. I know Sean. It's publicly known now. Sean is brokering the 793 MC1 SR, the 793. It's the one higher than mine for 150K, and there is going to be a buyer for it. And you know what? 150K. That's cheap. It's actually a great price. It's actually, I don't say it's cheap. It's
not confirmed price.
It's priced right. It's priced right.
Yeah,
200 might be a little 221, 250, 225 might be a little on the higher end. And 100K is too low. That's what I'm trying to say. So for me, it's like, I'm not really too concerned as to what the industry or what collectors are going to dictate it. Here are the facts. Go on VeVe app. Go on every single collectible and comic. I don't care which one it is. Go to the lowest mints and tell me if those are the highest ones that are being sold for. And tell me if those are the ones that are the ones that are in most demand. I don't hear anybody telling me if the 41 on a collectible wall. Right? I don't hear anybody saying, hey, you got the 53? You got the 57? No, you got the 42, you got the 41, you got the 45. That's what they want. They want the low lows. That's the market. I'm not saying that those other ones don't have value or no one's wanting them. I'm just saying when it comes to premiums and people actually pulling money out of your pocket, you said it right. Look, if they can afford the 45, they can afford the 43, they can afford the 41, they're going to go for the highest one. Why are they going for these numbers? That's where my argument, where the significance of the low mints holds water more than any of the other arguments. I'm not saying that commons don't do it or the first mints of those particular ones don't do it. I believe they all do. I think each lowest mint in each of the variants all hold their own water for that particular debate. However, when it comes to premium values, you have to go to scarcity. You have to go to the next vector. It's scarcity. I mean, look, there's only well, arguably 600 or some only 400 and some only 250 of availability for SRs. So, I mean, it gets to a point where it's like, look, there's only one of him. There ain't two of him. He's rare. You know what I mean? It's not like you could say, I don't want it. You know, that's a kind of rare. That's a scarcity in it. No, but really, so what I'm saying is like, you know, I mean, listen, I had a question. I know you guys could probably answer this. And what you were saying, I think Spencer, you were talking. I'm sorry, maybe Sleepyn. You were talking about I apologize, Foster. You were the one that said it. It had to do with like say Todd, for instance. Like Todd's a little more popular, not as rare as Rizzo, but it's more. You know what I mean? Like Wonder Woman, she's not an ultra rare or rare, but she's worth more as a common. You know what I'm saying? So there are particular aspects of lower variant grades and have higher additions that are worth more than a scarcer upper tier variant. You know?
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that, first of all, cute dog. I think it really comes down to personal preference. You know, it's same with physical comic books. I mean, some people love signed comics with the yellow label. Some people don't. I know people who just purely collect Silver Age keys. Some people don't. It's just they collect everything across the board. But what VeVe's done, what's really cool, is that by combining all the entire total editions and with all the variants, you've created this debate, right? The most important thing that you need for something like the low mid system to work is to have a movement behind it, right? And people are excited about it. People are pumped. I mean, we've gone from 50,000 to 100,000 now, past 1 million active users, and I would say the majority of people are very excited about low mint numbers, and I think that trend is going to continue. But as far as like specific mint numbers, right? So like Andre, like your number, for example, on the Spider-Man Secret Rare, or like, you know, in 1962 on Journey to Mystery 85, that's the year that the book was released. I think those are going to be a one of ones. I think there's going to be people who would look at those and say, oh yeah, that's truly a one of a kind. So I think that's going to stand out as well. But it really comes down to personal preference, and I think there's enough excitement for everyone to for it all to work.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. My only thing is, again, like with liquidity, is like you might have somebody really wealthy like Mr. Pegs come along and be like, hey, I'll pay you
you got more than me, bro,
for your serial number 35, or you might not. You might find
you got more than me, bro. Don't talk about money like me. You know what I'm saying? I'll have more than you once Omi goes up, and I probably have more than NFTs.
I don't know, man. How much
that's still not to be determined.
How much Bitcoin you got?
Listen, Andre, you're invited on my yacht, bro. Don't worry about it. And it's a boat. It's a boat within a boat. You take the boat and you come on, and you know you.
Your Metaflower or your real yacht? Your Metaflower or your real yacht?
No metaverse stuff, bro. This is the real deal, bro.
Actually, if everything goes right, he'll be able to have a yacht inside a car.
Oh, yachtception.
That's Luciano right there, bro. That's my son.
That's awesome.
But I mean, you know, I'm just saying. But all jokes aside, I mean, you know, it's a great. Obviously, this stream is absolutely. It's great for the industry. It's great for the community. I know there's a lot. Everybody's got a different opinion, and you know, and that's what's great about it, because none of us are right, none of us are wrong, and we all just, you know, obviously what you're willing to invest in, that's what you're happy with, and it really is personal preference. I mean, like I said, before this Comic-Con, I never owned a real comic in my life, because I got into obviously the space, and obviously they opened up Comic-Con because of COVID and everything. You know, I spent a significant amount of money here. There's you know, probably close to 10K that if I didn't have VeVe in my life, or I didn't invest in and have them, I wouldn't have none of these comics. So that brought that much money into that space. And obviously there's people who are comic collectors. I'm sure Sean and Spencer, you guys, even Sleepyn, you guys were obviously in the comic space before VeVe, right? You go in those comics. So what'd you do? You came in and spend money, probably maybe more into the digital space than you do in your hard copy space. So that's what I'm saying. So these industries complement each other. And I think that if you have Comic-Cons, and you have Comic-Cons globally, and you have obviously VeVe globally, and as time goes on and the more licenses and stuff that comes aboard, I think the liquidity will just play itself out, man. I don't think there'll be any questions about it being whether it's liquid or not. And I think that because we're tied to a deflationary crypto coin, I think the whole scope of this whole package is just, it's so robust and compelling, bro. I don't know. Yeah.
That makes sense for sure. Especially once we move to immutable, hopefully that'll help with the market liquidity, and as more people can buy stuff with,
Yeah.
theory.
What'd you tell me when we were in the private? You said immutables next week. What was that? What'd you tell me, Andre?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow. I'm sorry.
Guys, this is not. I'm not. No, not a confirmation. Not a confirmation. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it.
Hey, I tell you what though, and obviously you are a comic guru, so Sleepyn, man. When we get that Amazing Fantasy 15, bro, that's going to be, man, and that's going to be such a great.
He has an amazing collection. Mm-hmm. He has an amazing collection.
Yeah, that when that comes out, man, that's going to be an NFT to remember, man. You know,
I already have some gems set aside, but not as many as you, I'm sure.
For that drop? You got to get lucky to get the drop, man. I know. Huh?
When is the drop coming? What are you guys talking about?
No, I mean the Amazing Fantasy. It's a 15, right? With the Spider-Man.
First Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Wait, wasn't that released already, or am I crazy?
I have 300 gems ready for it right now.
So the first appearance of Spider-Man is Amazing Fantasy 15. That's the first sole issue of Spider-Man.
It hasn't come out yet.
Has not come out yet.
When is it dropping?
We don't know. People speculated
people are speculating December 17th, are they not? I've heard that
because that's when the Spider-Man movie comes out.
Okay.
Well,
I mean, it would make sense.
It comes out on the 16th when I got the tickets. I mean, that's when.
Okay, so the 16th or the 17th maybe would come out. I have 17 gems ready to buy it, but it might not be enough.
Well, it'll be enough in the primary market. I can
but Sleepyn, you told me you had like 3 bots, bro. So you're good. That's awesome, buddy.
I don't start that too.
My bots are a failure because I haven't won anything in like 2 weeks.
There you go. Now, are you guys worried? And I don't mean to bring up worries, but I think it's an important conversation to have when you have over 300 people in the chat. It's about educating people and giving people the perspective to make those, calls and decisions. You guys understand comic book value. You also understand market trends. And obviously I'm looking at it more so from the side of, Andre brings up interesting points when it comes to, the liquidity in the market, how many people are actually buying at X amount of price points. I'm not even so much concerned about, will someone buy a comic book for $10,000? I think the internet has shown us that crazy things will happen if people have money. So I'm not so much concerned about that. What I am concerned about is the oversaturation of the comic book market on VeVe. We're seeing 2 comic book drops a week. I think a week or so we had like 3 drops in a week.
3 this week.
3 this week too. And so, and once again, I'm coming from this from a very, green perspective. And I don't mean green in the sense of NFT green. I mean like green is in not having the information. I don't know how long you can sustain this pace, even with this user base, based on, like, to me, and maybe I'm wrong, but there's only so many valuable comic books, right? Like sooner or later, we're going to get to like, yeah, you can release Marvel Comic #1, ASM #1, Fantastic Four #1, ASM #50. But like at some point, you're just going to be releasing, hey, here's Jim and Joe in their crazy adventure from last week, and like no one's going to care. So, have you guys, put any thought into
can I answer that by asking a few questions?
Can you answer the question with a question? I mean, if it's going to keep the conversation going, sure.
Yeah, because here's how I am. So, Spencer and Sean, how long have you guys particularly been, or at least when you very first time you entered the comic space, collectively or individually?
Myself was April, but
as an investor, probably over 5 years.
No. Comics, actual physical comics, not the NFTs.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Sleepyn, how about you? Years wise, maybe.
I don't want to answer that question.
Listen, here's why, right?
Yeah.
Because how long comics are at least 80 years old? All right, arguably. Just saying. I don't know how we could define. I don't know how we could define a calculation of how many comics have been released and how many different versions of each of the comics. But you know what happens? Comic-Con happens every year, And you know what happens? There is millions and millions of dollars that are bought and sold every single year at each of the individual Comic Cons that I've been to, and that there is. And guess what? There's a new stand that has a comic everywhere, and they keep printing them, and there's still a market for them. So there's millions and millions of people, and realize something. The next generation of, kids that are not collecting, collect. And I think that this just has to do with just the hard comic market, because it's still robust and it's still going. Now we're just breaking ice into the NFTs, and we're just got one app that's only specializing in one item that has a lot of focus on it. There's not like there's 10 other apps that all do MC1, comics. So because it's so localized and focused in this particular area, I think that as time goes on, the more and more people that jump on the app, and the more the interoperability that comes along with this, I don't think, opposed to, contrary to what you're saying, Foster, I think it's actually, we're not going to have enough to go around. And I believe this in my heart of hearts. I believe that everything that we see, that we have right now, we're going to be laughing at these particular things, because I don't know if it was you, Spencer. I swear you might have predicted this a while ago. And I think maybe even when the MC1 commons were like $40 each, I think you predicted $1,000 common. And I'll tell you what, man, you're 25% of the way there. And that's a far away from a $40 to $60 a common that it used to be. So, it's playing itself out. And I'm so glad that we're going to at least be on a blockchain that's going to be able to handle the volume. And maybe we'll go to another blockchain, maybe a different blockchain later on or something. I'll have to, maybe something else, because we're going to be clogged up on that one. You never know. But I know that because the fees are going to be low, and they're just going to keep producing. I mean, like you said, but see, like this, let me just make a point. MC1 is just one comic for the whole release. Like Thanos and a couple of the other ones, all 5 of the variants are all individual comic books. It's not like, one, and then they had like maybe some VeVe artists that did a couple of the other variants. Some editions that we have in these particular comics, we have all of the variants, all are actual hard copy comics. So, I mean, I think there's enough to go around is what I'm saying. I think we have, you know what I mean? Because if we could take one comic, so for instance, say the Amazing Fantasy 15, just one comic. Say they do like the MC1 and they spread it out. Maybe they just make the SR and the common, and, it might, that's just one comic that they can spread out through almost all the variants, or maybe at least 3 of them. So,
yeah. I think there's 3 parts of comic book collecting. We've only seen one to help the saturation. If they can get to the other 2, then it's going to help. The 3 things are, one is it's an investment. That's the only one that we're on. No one. I bet you, and I don't mean to be mean, 99% of people haven't read these comics. They just get them. It's a ticket. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just trying to be honest, right? The other 2 pieces of comic book collecting are, well, actually, we do have this, which is your attachment to the character. I mean, some people love Spider-Man. Some people love, Dane Whitman, the Black Knight. Some people love Kit Harington. So that's probably why. I don't know.
Well, are you saying 99% of the market are flippers, and the 1% are those other 2?
No. I didn't explain that well. I was just saying 99% of people haven't read the story, which is the 3rd piece of what I was trying to say. So let me just phrase it again. So number 1 is an investment vehicle. Number 2, you have an attachment to the character, which, a lot of people don't know who Hitmonkey is, so they aren't attached. Some people are attached, and that's why we maybe saw that comic go up. And then the 3rd piece is, can you read the story and the story is meaningful? And that piece we do not have, because you cannot get the full run of the book yet. I think they're going to fix that. They're going to allow us to buy it in a bundle or an omnibus. They'll figure that out. But like I said, I actually did say before this started, is if you read the Thanos 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, you read that story and you're like, oh, this is so awesome. I mean, Thanos has the Hulk as his pet in the basement. This is the best story ever. I love this. That will make you attract people to that comic even more. And therefore, to speak to what Foster's saying, that will help some of the saturation. But you're going to have books that people just are like, you're going to have throwaway books. It's just going to happen. And that's okay. But what's interesting is those throwaway books may be throwaway books for some, but not for others. And of course, that is the cycle of all comics, all collectibles, right? And they always say, I have a friend who collects covers with girls blowing bubblegum on the front. I have people that collect red covers. And that's where you'll have these niches, and people will collect those, and they'll be, it'll be great.
Yeah. The other thing I would add is VeVe is also incentivizing people to collect multiple books from the same series through the MCP program, the Master Collector program. So you get additional points if you own, I'm pretty sure it's if you own 5 books from the same series. Is that
No,
not true,
they did
Sleepyn?
away with that,
They,
sadly.
They got
yeah,
rid
they
of
did
that,
away with that
really?
with
That's a
MCP
shame.
version 2.
They adjusted
got
that
it.
on the last update on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Got it.
And
Okay.
I know it was because, I mean, for example, you know, Future Imperfect, Hulk Future Imperfect, people may or may not know, there's only 2 issues to that. So how are you going to get 5, right? You know, and, you know, Journey into Mystery turns into Thor. So is Journey into Mystery part of the Thor, or, you know, stupid comic book collectors like me know that. And I'm sure they recognize that right away. And they're like, okay, let's take that out because that's too confusing.
To me, Journey's Loki, bro. That's it.
Until Journey into Mystery 83, and then you're going to want that one too.
So let's bring it to the current now, because I've seen a couple of people ask in the comments, not that this isn't a great conversation, it is, but people are asking, you know, they're getting excited about comics now. They want to buy comics tomorrow. So what do you guys think about the comic tomorrow? Do Sean or Spencer, do you guys maybe want to bring up the comic for tomorrow, and you guys can give, because I'm curious, because I think it's beneficial to the community that, you know, we may pull this up and we may have, you know, between you know, yourselves, Sleepyn, and Pegs, we may have, you know, 3 completely different perspectives as to, you know, what this comic should be valued and rated, and I think it'll be beneficial to go over for the community so that they can see kind of the thought processes that go through you guys coming up with each of these you know, decisions. So I'm curious to see, you know.
You guys want me to go first? You want to go first?
You can go ahead.
Okay, so I'll just say this, and I'm sure you guys have more numbers. I have no numbers on it. I just know that Dark Hawk is, when it was announced, I was talking to people and I kept on laughing because Dark Hawk is a meme in the comic book world, because there's so many comic book collectors that have always said, like, that book in the comic book world is basically worthless. I mean, I think it's got some traction lately, but basically it was like $1 book for years and years and years and years. And so people would always say, I'm getting this book, I'm getting 50 of them because this book is going to be worth a lot and I'm going to put my kid through college. And it was just like a joke. So everybody around comic book collectors will all be like, you got your Dark Hawk 1, right? And then like 99% of comic book collectors have that book because it's it's almost like a meme book. But recently there has been rumors that Dark Hawk would make an appearance potentially in Disney Plus or MCU. And additionally, they came out with a brand new Dark Hawk series. I think it launched, you guys might know, 2 or 3 months ago, I think came out. So it's relatively new. And of course, when Marvel starts pushing a character, they generally have a plan. And so, but anyways, that's my take on Dark Hawk.
Go ahead. I'm real easy when you go, because I'm gonna be real quick when you'll understand me when I'm done.
Yeah, I think this character these drops are very intentional. I think a lot of these characters we're going to see in the MCU, especially the ones that involve first appearances. The Dark Hawk has been a character that that's been speculated for quite some time. Even I think it was even like a year and a half ago, maybe even 2 years ago, the physical comic, the 9.8, shot up in price because of the speculation that we would see a film being developed by Disney. And those rumors are getting stronger. And I think we might, to add what Sleepyn said, we'll probably not even just an appearance, might even see his own show. I think it's very possible. So yeah, I'm actually really excited about this character. Mm-hmm. I was kind of at first like, no, I don't know, but now I'm like, the rumors are getting stronger and stronger, and I learn more about the character. And yeah, I'm actually kind of excited for it.
The character itself is just really cool, has incredible abilities. If you check out our HODL or Sell video, you can learn more.
Oh yeah. So this is our segment that we do for every comic book drop called HODL or Sell. We give information about the comic, the value of the comic in the physical world, and then we give a tip whether we plan to HODL or sell.
Is this a HODL or a sell?
You gotta watch. You gotta watch.
Come on, Pegs. You gotta watch, baby. Well, I'm gonna tell you what it is for me. It's not a HODL or a sell because I'm never gonna own it to do either one. Unfortunately, for everyone else that likes it and believes in it, that's cool. I listen. There's a bunch of HODLs that you guys did that I didn't get into.
Yeah,
and I lost a lot of opportunities and a lot of value there. I have nothing to do with more of the character. I'm a little bit more with the art and a little bit more with the story. And I do a little bit of research. And if I like it, that's what I'll go into for this particular release. It doesn't give me the ooh ah moment. So for me, it's just not a collecting item for me. However, however, I do change my mind periodically. Like I was not into Thor, and that was my probably I probably spent more money acquiring the Thor set because of that reason. So that was one where I had to change my mind. And unfortunately, I spent a lot more getting what I had to get it instead of getting it early. You know, I waited for the market to kind of find itself and it pumped. So I spent more. That was, you know, a no-no, even though I'm happy and grateful I got it. But this particular one, I'm not collecting this one, but it's cool.
I have a question.
I just saw. Oh, sorry, real quick, Foster. I saw a
go
question.
for
I
it.
said, why sell? Like, I hold all of them. So something that we preach on our show, the Hodl or Sell podcast, is that, you know, we think that it's important. You know, if it's not a book that you think is worth holding on to long term, we think if you actually get one on the drop, if you're able to make some profit on it, we think you should sell it and then reinvest it into these like Silver Age Key and Grail books, just because that's where we think they have the most value long term.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I guess where I come from it, you know, like I said, you know, I don't even want to call myself, a classical collector or a physical collector. I mean, I knew very little to nothing about collecting before I kind of got into VeVe back in April. And when I did, it was very much from the Omi side. So I kind of picked this up as like, hey, it seems like something that people are making money off of. I could probably do that too. So obviously I don't know a lot about characters, a lot about history and nostalgia. I mean, I know the big characters and stuff, like, you know, who's Spider-Man? Well, I know who Spider-Man is. I've seen them, you know, but like when you talk about like I'll be honest, I don't even think I've ever seen Darkhawk in a movie or anything. Like, I'm not familiar with that, but I know that we did the physical drop earlier this week, and I believe Darkhawk was the ultra rare, correct? Was it Darkhawk or was that someone else? Was that Nighthawk or something, or who was it that? What was the physical drop that we did over the weekend? I don't even remember.
Oh,
It was
that was DC character.
Oh,
Yeah.
it was a DC character, and that's the thing. Like, listen, like I don't even pay
Hawk
attention
Girl.
to this stuff, right? Like Hawk Girl, that's what it is. So clearly, I'm not paying attention to this stuff, right? Like that's not the focus of what I focus my investment on, which is why I think
you got Hawk Girl, Dark Hawk, Hawkeye. You know, it's all hawked up.
it's like I hear a hawk something and I go with it. So my question to you is, hypothetically, obviously, this doesn't align with my specific example, but we have seen examples previously of collectibles being released in the app, and then characters of those collectibles being released in comic book form. Do you guys believe that having the collectibles on the app or having a relation to them has any impact on the value of the comics, or do you see them as being separated? Because we know, of course, when you release a collectible, it doesn't affect the so if we see a comic book come out and it's Thanos, and then we get the Thanos collectible in the app, it doesn't take away from getting the FA of Thanos just because we saw a comic book. Do you see any correlation between the physical and the comic at all, or not so much?
I think there will be, because it's a thing, to show your collectible with your comic. I do believe it'll probably be a thing in the VeVe vaults once we can put the comics up. You're going to put your FA Spider-Man next to your FA comic Spider-Man, or, whatever, your Thanos, like you said. I think it'll be a thing. I also think that it's sets of things, right? So people have been asking me about, Dr. Octopus dropped today. So they're dropping all of these villains, Spider-Man villains. And people like villains. You're going to want to get the set. You're talking about sets, right? You want to get the set of all the Spider-Man villains. Hey, yeah, the Sinister Six, that's what they're called. I'm going to get Lizard. I'm going to get Doc Ock. I'm going to get, I'm going to get Sandman. I think that's going to be a thing. And then when they they drop the collectibles, like you're saying, Foster, I'm going to have the comics right here on my wall, and I'm going to have the statues right here, and I'm going to have my Spider-Man guy fighting them. I mean, I think it's going to be a thing.
Yeah, the first time I think we actually saw that was Web of Spider-Man 118, the first appearance of Ben Reilly, and then we've seen the Ben Reilly statues. So that's a perfect example. But the thing about that character is no one knows who that character is, right? So his popularity isn't there yet, but it's pretty easy to presume that this character is going to join the MCU. I mean, it's the only time I've ever seen that happen. So yeah, it's easy to presume that this character is going to be in the MCU. I don't know to what level, but I mean, Tom Holland playing him because it's a clone Spider-Man, so could be really fun.
The Web of Spider-Man comic, that was Ben Reilly.
That was first appearance of Ben Reilly. Yeah.
I thought they're just trying to match it because it came out in physical form that week too. So they're just trying to, because they killed.
It's possible.
Well, I gotta be careful what I say here. I don't want to ruin things for people. All right, I won't say what I was gonna say.
Is it what I already said?
No, you didn't say it, so don't say. Okay.
You know what's so funny, guys? We were all talking a little bit before we went live, and for those of you that don't know how this kind of stuff works, like you can obviously chat before you go live, and they were having a conversation, and Pags was talking, and they go, hey, I don't want to ruin anything for you. And I'm like, dude, you're not ruining anything for me, man. Trust me. You're not ruining anything for me.
I want to it's serious for people. I don't want to, I don't want.
That's fair. I respect that. I respect that a lot. No, that's fair. I mean, I'll be honest, guys, like this has been an absolutely fantastic conversation. I know Sean and Spencer have a podcast to go to. I had a couple nibbles of dinner. I haven't had a chance to quite get that done. I know Andrei's got some stuff he's got to do. But I want to thank you all for being here. Do you guys have any final thoughts that you would, well, maybe we'll just go around in order. So we'll start at Sleepyn and kind of go clockwise. And then, any final thoughts that you guys have about, it doesn't even have to be comics. I mean, obviously this is a comic conversation, but there are 300 people here now. So, any final thoughts about, the VeVe app, the OMI token? Do you want to make a crazy prediction as to when we see Immutable or the money transmitter license? Any guesses on, what comes out in the AMA tomorrow, or really anything that's on your mind? I'll give you guys each the floor there for a minute or two, and then we'll wrap it up.
I just want to say thanks. I've not met a lot of these people in person, so I really am humbled by being on this stream with y'all. And I do have a prediction for the OMI token. I do believe it's going to go to 10 to 30, $50 million. That's my prediction.
A lot of smiles in this chat.
You got to say not financial advice. That's the rule. You got to say not financial.
What happens if I say it's financial advice? This is financial advice. Is that
I'm bowing out.
No, I'm serious. Do I get sued immediately? Like, is it like people pull up, the guys come out?
I learned that from Cavell. You say $10 OMI,
but I'm saying seriously, man. They're gonna look at me. They're gonna come in here.
They're gonna go.
I only have 4 different shirts. They're gonna sue me for those.
I'm a big fan of that Amazing Spider-Man comic. So Amazing Fantasy.
I do have an Amazing Fantasy 15. All right, they're gonna take the Amazing Fantasy 15 and the Incredible Hulk back there. But other than that,
the background before you make that.
You got a 15 back there? Let me see.
It's right there.
That's in the middle, next to the Hulk in the middle.
That's the Incredible Hulk 1. Yeah.
What CGC is it? What grade?
It's a 1.8, and then there's an X-Men 1.
That is that's one we're really high on when it comes to VeVe.
Yeah, excited for that one.
I have a Fantastic Four somewhere around here too. I think in the trash. I have to get it out of there. No, it's not. It's actually hung on the wall. Rather, I don't put that one in the trash.
That's good.
Awesome.
Andrei, you're up next. If you have any final thoughts, anything you'd like to say, the floor.
I thought I misheard him. Did he say 50 million or billion in the market?
I mean, more than $1.
Who cares?
He's going with more than $1. So.
All right. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. I learned a lot. Yeah, I think the future is exciting. I hope that VeVe, or actually Acomi, incorporates a lot more, usability with the token itself, because that's mostly what I'm excited for. I feel like a bag holder, so I'm like, come on, give me some utility. I want to buy some more with my tokens. So come eventually, but yeah, thanks for having me.
Also, you got to give us because I've had about 50 people ask me in the chat. You got it, and I know you've been playing with them in the background. You got to do like a 10-second card trick because
I just did. I've been doing them the whole time.
Well,
I've been watching.
I've been watching too, but I'm just saying if I don't say it, people.
What?
Whoa.
What is that? What is this?
That's awesome.
How do they float like that? I don't know.
Okay. All right. Yep. That'll do it. That'll do it. All right, Pegs, you got to follow that one up. Sorry.
No, listen. I don't speak much. I just. That's all I do, bro. I do nothing else.
The Super Saiyans.
That's it, man.
It was so much fun being with you guys, being around people who just are so passionate about the space. And if anybody has any questions at all, just feel free to hit us up anytime. And we have a spreadsheet that does updated comic book rankings, and it gives full details of the value of the comic in the physical world and digital world, and this is the total editions as well. So that's on our link tree. Feel free to jump on that when.
Yeah, if you could, real quick though, if you could have, I somehow, some way, I feel this. I feel I'm going to get the Amazing Spider-Man 1 somehow. I'm feeling it. So get Roth to kind of maybe slip away that ultra rare again.
It's safe in Roth's vault, so you can contact him.
Yeah, I know. I'll remember that, Spence.
Yeah. Well, one thing I just say, I'm excited to, keep working on this, standardized system around, grading digital comics, and I think there's a lot that we can do together to, really come up with a standardized system that everybody agrees with.
Yeah.
So,
and collaborating with people like Sleepyn, man. It's been so much fun chatting with you about comics, and you have such an amazing insight on the space. And it's been I feel blessed to be able to chat with you about this every day. So it's super cool. Super cool.
Thank you so much, guys. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I knew I was going to be a little bit out of my element on this one, but the information was just absolutely valuable. And of course, for those of you guys that are watching right now live or are going to be watching this back afterwards, make sure that you check out everyone's YouTube channel or their social media. Sleepyn Comics has a YouTube channel. You can follow him at Sleepyn Comics. Andrei Jikh, for those of you that don't know who he is, has a small YouTube channel as well. You can check him out at Andrei Jikh. Mr. Pags does not have a YouTube channel, but you can follow him on Twitter at Mr. Pags.
We got a guy. Wait, we got the guy in the comment right there.
Step your game up.
E1 Guap. He's in a comment. You see him there?
Yeah, this guy?
He's got the 599 MC1 SR.
No way.
The lowest one I have in my chart.
That's crazy.
Awesome.
That's my dude, bro. And wait, I'm gonna give you another one. Are you ready?
All right.
He also owns the 534 Fantastic 4-1 SR.
I'll put it in.
Gangster, bro. Gangster.
That's crazy. Wow.
Insane, bro.
That's crazy. Well, that's
crazy,
that's some hype to wrap it up there for sure. And guys, of course, make sure to follow Comics and Crypto. They do a great channel as well. Like I said, they put out a hodl and sell video for all of the comics. So if you are looking for some insight, although we did talk about it a little bit on everything that they are doing, make sure to go check them out on their YouTube channel as well. Guys, thank you so much for participating tonight, and to the 300 of you that were watching for the entire hour and a half that we were live. Thank you so much for dropping by. If you're new to my channel, please feel free to subscribe so that you do not miss any other content that I will be putting out like this or anything otherwise. Obviously, stay tuned to all the stuff that we will be doing in the community moving forward. And as Andrei said, I very much look forward to start creating some utility and events for a lot of these collectibles and really start to get together with people, outside of the internet and get to know people a little bit better. So thank you.
Thanks for having us, Foster.
Yeah, of course,
Thanks so
guys.
much.
Take care.
Thank you, guys.
Love
Thank
you
you,
all.
Bye, guys.
Andrei.
Thanks, everyone.
All you
Peace.
guys,
Yeah.
thanks for coming, man. Thanks, Foster.